Tuesday, September 24th. We're just entering in the final quarter of the moon. I guess that would make it the third quarter. Maybe heading towards the fourth quarter, which actually would be, 4 quarters would be the new moon. So let's assume that we're going to call this the fourth quarter. I just spent a little time re-mechanically aligning the scope. And what I've shot for here is to get a good balance on the azimuth axis. And that incorporates both axes. Slightly off with the counterweight down position, but the goal is to just make very minor adjustments to the azimuth primarily to see if I can improve on the parameter values. But the key for tonight is we're going to look at Wil Tirion's sky chart. I believe this is page 19, subequatorial in hour 22. We'll try to go as far north as we can get, and we will pick out studies that are actually on the chart, which means basically there are a bunch of studies that are really meant for amateur astronomers with scopes 12 inches in aperture and smaller. I'll need this lamp because I have to consult the chart, and we'll get a start. Right now it's about a little after 6:30. We probably won't get started until 8:15. There you can tell for yourself the sun is just about to set. Probably about 6:45 this evening it will have set. We are now into the autumnal season. Well, alrighty then, it's now about 8:10 in the evening. The Milky Way is standing straight overhead. I walked right out without even dark adapting and I can see it. So I think we've got at least stars to magnitude 5 overhead and possibly even fainter to magnitude 5.5. We have a very nice black and white view of a culminating dumbbell nebula Messier 27. And on plan for tonight is to go through the Wil Tirion Sky Guide and pick out various studies of various types that are in the Sky Guide. And as I may have mentioned earlier, the Sky Guide specifically targets amateur astronomers who have scopes in the 6 to 12 inch aperture range. And of course, last evening we spent a good deal of time playing with all kinds of settings to get the best possible views of texture in galaxies and a nice black background sky. I think we've done a pretty good job of optimizing it. So here is our view, kickoff view of the dumbbell planetary nebula, Messier 27. Having imaged the dumbbell planetary nebula, we're going to push as far north as I think we can get away with without any blockage of the aperture. So I have gone to NGC 7243, an open cluster in Lacerta. It's magnitude 6.4, 21 arc minutes in size, consists of about 40 stars, the brightest of which are magnitude 8.4. It's a class 4 too. As a class 4, the stars are fairly spread out, and as a class 2, they're of average variation in brightness. It certainly is quite a stellar region of the sky. What we're seeing here is IC 5217. It's a planetary nebula in Lacerta, and it's about 52 degrees northern declination. The only reason we can make out any of this planetary nebula region is because the scope is not pointing straight overhead in the zenith. We are tilted maybe 15 degrees to the east, which gives us the possibility of viewing. Now, I can't tell you exactly where the IC is located, but I will give you data on it. Give me one moment. IC 5217 in the Wil Tirion Guide. IC 5217 is a planetary nebula in Lacerta. It's also known as PK 100-5.1, whatever that means. CS equals 15.4, that's the central star, and the magnitude of the, I believe, overall magnitude is 11.3, and it is about 1/4 of an arc minute in diameter. We are at right ascension 222356, declination 50 degrees, 58 minutes and 3 seconds, and yes, we are getting some blockage of the scope aperture. Okay, we're now having a look for NGC 7209. It's an open cluster once again at Lacerta. Magnitude total 7.7, some 25 arc minutes in size, so it definitely spills outside the 15 by 20 arc minute field of view of the screen. There are about 25 stars, and the brightest are magnitude 9. It's a 3 Roman numeral 1. Means the stars are fairly disparately spread about, but they are very similar magnitude. 3,800 light years distant, right ascension 220507, declination plus 46 degrees and 29 minutes. We are not getting any aperture block at 46 and almost a half degrees north declination. Here we have a very large, bright NGC galaxy without a Messier designation. This is NGC 7331, a galaxy in Pegasus, magnitude 9.5. Very large, 10.2 by 4.2 arc minutes, which means we're adding about 5 magnitudes to get about a 14.5 or 15 magnitude overall average surface brightness. This is a beauty. It's a spiral with a bar and a lowercase c, so 3 times removed from the lenticular. It is 46 million light years distant, but at that size, it is about the size of Messier 31, 150,000 light years in diameter. We're at right ascension 223704, declination 342457. A very sweet view. Let's have a look once again at NGC. Having looked at 7331, let's drop down to NGC 7217, which was our feature galaxy of the previous evening for a comparative view. Okay, we featured NGC 7217 last night as we played with various settings to get the optimal image quality and amount of detail visible in the galaxy using the standard settings of 128 flood and 42 decibels auto gain control. Now, one thing I learned when I did the research on this is the data in the SkyLive.com said this galaxy was like 1+ magnitudes fainter than we're seeing here. So this, but you can obviously tell looking at this galaxy that it is what we expect on this handset here in the database of the Gemini 2. NGC 7217 galaxy in Pegasus is magnitude 10.1. 4 by 3.4 arc minutes, which calculates out to about an average surface brightness of 12.9. It's a spiral with a lowercase b, 47 million light years distant, and this puts it at about maybe 2/5 the size of our last NGC galaxy 7331, which was of a similar distance, but located in probably 5 or 10 degrees away in the sky. We are at right ascension 220752, declination 312132. And we saw an awful lot of sunlight passages last night in this part of the sky. What you need to look for here is a good sense of definition of the core region, the spiral extremities, and any sense of definition right along the frontier between the spiral arms and the other parts of the galaxy where where there's far more diffuse luminosity due to far fewer star concentrations. So have a look at that. I'd say that view is comparable to the one we had last night. At 128 flood, 42 decibels, with the left with the various screen brightness, contrast, and other settings that we finished off the evening. While NGC 7332 is very close to the previous galaxy that we looked at, which was 331, it is quite distant in terms of space, even though it shares the same constellation of Pegasus. NGC 7332 is Galaxy and Pegasus, a magnitude fainter, 11.1, 3.8 by 1.1 arc minutes, so a 3-to-1 aspect ratio, suboblate, spiral of the lenticular class, 60 million light years distant. Galaxy is probably somewhere around 50,000 light years in diameter. We're at right ascension 22, 37, 24, and declination plus 23 degrees, 47 minutes and 53 seconds. What I would say about this galaxy is it has a brilliant neighbor. And I'm not sure what that neighbor is, but it doesn't show up on the Wil Tirion guide. I do believe we've imaged this galactic pair before. This is a spectacular view. Both are giving a rather edgy on perspective. So very, very nice. So I'm going to go ahead and look on the chart for our next study as you continue to regard this spectacular view of this pair of near edge-on galaxies. Having to use a light here to be able to see the guide. One thing we should be getting very clear about is the galaxies that we're going to find in the Wil Tirion guide are few and far between. They're probably all going to be brighter than magnitude 12. In this case, NGC 7457, a galaxy in Pegasus, is magnitude 11.2 and rather largish, 4 by 2.3 arc minutes, lenticular spiral, 40 million light years distant. It's at right ascension 23:0, 59 seconds, and declination plus 30 degrees, 8 minutes, and 40 seconds. It's a very decent view, but because it's a lenticular, you're not really going to get a good sense of anything that hints at spiral arms. It's basically a lens-like disk in space, a spiral galaxy on the transition to becoming an elliptical. What it needs is a bit more mass and an opportunity to have a stellar explosion of development, typically by merging with another galaxy or having already completed that merger, but not quite having enough mass to get into the elliptical class. NGC 7448 is another galaxy in Pegasus. Magnitude 11.7, 2.6 by 1.2 arc minutes. Spiral of the lower BC class, 2.5 times removed from lenticular, which means basically it's got an awful lot of cold dark matter that it needs to convert into stars before it reaches the kind of stellar density that you would associate with a lenticular galaxy class O. This galaxy is 101 million light years distant, probably somewhere around 65,000 light years in diameter at that apparent size. Its right ascension is hour 23 and 3 seconds, no minutes. Declination plus 15 degrees, 58 minutes and 48 seconds. A decent view. It does look like it has some kind of spiralicity to it or a break in the spiral arm that appears to the left on the screen. NGC 7686 is an open cluster in Andromeda. And it is an alignment, if I can find this out. Got to find it on, once again, on the chart. It's associated with a bright star, but I'm not quite finding it on the chart right now. Oh yeah, it doesn't have a designation, but it looks like the star is probably of about the 4th to 5th magnitude. And you see 7686, open cluster Andromeda. Total collective magnitude of 5.6, fairly bright, 15 arc minutes in size, consisting of about 20 stars, the brightest of which are, by the way, magnitude 6.2. It's a class 4-1, so the stars are spread fairly wide, and they are all of similar magnitude, except for that line of sight star we're seeing there. The cluster is 5,000 light years distant, at right ascension 23:30:07, declination 49 degrees and 8 minutes. We are not getting any aperture block that I can see, but the scope is very difficult to reach the camera. Let's watch this one develop. It's a planetary nebula, NGC 7662. We'll look up the data. We have an owl out here, and a motorcycle, and dogs barking. Well, that may have been an ATV. Okay, NGC 7662 is a planetary nebula in Andromeda, quite bright. As bright as Ring Nebula, 98.6. The problem is the light is highly condensed, 17 by 14 arc seconds. The central star is magnitude 14, so that's a magnitude and a half brighter than the central star of the Ring. It is located 6,400 light years distant, which is probably something like 3 times further out. Right ascension is 23 hours, 25 minutes, and 53 seconds. We are at declination 42 degrees, 32 minutes, and 5 seconds, and getting a nice, clear view of the sky. We've headed just about as far east as I want to go. We're about to exit the sky's middle third with NGC 7741. Galaxy in Pegasus, magnitude 11.3. 4.5 by 2.9 arc minutes, spiral with a bar and a lowercase c. 39 million light years in diameter, puts this one at about 50,000 light years in diameter. We are at right ascension 23:43:54, declination 26:04:32, and a decent view of a galaxy that seems to spread its light evenly towards what I'd call the 10 and the 5 o'clock directions on the screen. All right, we've gone about, as I mentioned, we've gone about as far east as we can go. That puts us, I'm going to have to look at the chart again, 7741, more than halfway through the Great Square. So we're going to have to wait on that. There is a 7769, it's further to the south. We might as well, and a 7625. Let's go to NGC 7625, which is near a bright star in the same field of view. So that was once again NGC 7625. This will be the last study out of the Wil Tirion guide, conveniently located in various positions in the middle sky's middle third. This is probably the faintest galaxy we will have imaged in the guide. And as I suspected, it is magnitude 12, in this case 12.1. NGC 7625, Galaxy in Pegasus, magnitude 12.1, face on 1.6 by 1.6 arc minutes, spiral of the lowercase a, 72 million light years distant, puts this one at about 40,000 light years in diameter. We are at right ascension 23:20:30, declination 17:13:33, and what I'm going to do now is I am going to try to image some faint galaxies along the culminating in slightly east, so that we can get a sense of how deep we can go this evening. I'd like to image something in the 16th magnitude range, but there's no guarantees there. Let's start with NGC 7300. All right, right out of the box, we've just stabilized the scope mount. We're probably going to get a bit of a diminishing ghost on the previous galaxy as the CMOS matrix wipes itself. We're at NGC 7304, and guess what? It is magnitude 16. 7304. Now, once again, it's possible that the value that we're seeing in the database is that of the blue-violet spectral magnitude. And in spiral galaxies, that typically is about 0.7 magnitudes fainter than the visual magnitude. So here we go, NGC 7304, Galaxy and Pegasus. It's also known as NGC 7303, not Messier for sure. Magnitude 16, 1.5 by 1 arc minute. That is a fairly large spread in a magnitude 16 galaxy. However, it is 168 million light years distant. So that puts it probably somewhere around 75,000 light years in diameter, half the size of Messier 31. It is described as a pure spiral, just an S. It's at right ascension 22, 31, 33, declination 30, 57, 21. The galaxy is very obvious on the screen. Maybe that's not the one. It could be. This looks more like a 13th or 14th. There might be a fainter galaxy over in this region that's magnitude 16. All right, we didn't have to go far in the database to NGC 7305, a galaxy in Pegasus, magnitude 15.1, a perfect 1 by 1 arc minutes in apparent size, a lenticular spiral, 348 million light years distant, puts this one right around 90 to 100,000 light years in diameter. I suspect the galaxy we are looking for is right there, magnitude 15.1. There is a brighter galaxy with a little more extension off to the 8 o'clock position. I'll have to do some tracing tomorrow to see where things have been falling on the screen. So magnitude 15.1, quite obvious. And potentially even brighter than that. Our next study was selected because it's a perfect 2-to-1 oblately presented galaxy. Bit bright, magnitude 12.5, 1.6 by 0.8 arc minute spiral of the AB class. 204 million light years distant, puts it at about 80 to, it's probably about the size of our own Milky Way, 80 to 90,000 light years in diameter. We are at right ascension 223406, declination plus 5 degrees 34 minutes and 11 seconds. We are in the sky's middle third. So we're getting a pretty transparent view of NGC 7311. Well, this should be our last adventitious view of the evening. We're having a look at NGC 7320A, Galaxy and Pegasus, well placed, plus 33 degrees, 47 minutes and 44 seconds, with a right ascension of 22 hours, 36 minutes and 32 seconds. The galaxy is listed as magnitude 16, quite small, 0.4 by 0.2 arc minutes in apparent size, lenticular spiral. So I can certainly tell myself that that right there would be a galaxy, but it could be just one of these fainter ones, smaller, fainter ones there. Remember, the galaxy is so small it's condensing more of its light down. In fact, if we had stars on the screen at these settings on this night, we would be seeing stars down to about magnitude 17.5. Galaxies to magnitude 16.5 because they spread their light further. So, here we've had our last adventitious view of the evening after going through the Wil Tirion sky guide. We noticed in the sky guide that all the galaxies were roughly magnitude 12 or brighter, and there weren't many of them. We had to go into the NGC catalog to start finding fainter galaxies up to magnitude, and I have seen them in the past listed up to about magnitude 16.5. We have been largely exploring this great square of Pegasus region with some other studies in Lacerta the lizard. And I think we can pretty much call it that. However, we might want to have one final look at something more familiar. And let's see what might pop up. Well, we've had a view of Messier 15 previously. This is Messier 2, a globular cluster in VER. I'm having trouble remembering what constellation VER is. Have to look it up tomorrow. Messier 2 is slightly fainter at magnitude 6.5 than Messier 15. It's also slightly smaller, 11.7 arc minutes in size. We are at 37,900 light years distance, so it's a fairly distant globular cluster. And it's off axis to the Milky Way, probably by about 50 degrees from the core of the Milky Way, bisecting it. We're at right ascension 21 hours, 33 minutes, and 29 seconds, very close to the celestial equator, -0, 49 minutes, and 23 seconds. Very condensed globular. The Messier catalog listing does not tell you what class globular you are seeing. However, I would estimate this to be a condensed class, maybe a class 3 or 4 globular cluster. And we're getting quite a good view. Now, one thing we might want to try with this as an experiment before we carpe noctem is to use the zoom function of the Rev2 system. So give me a moment as I set that up. Okay, here we have our normal 75x view. And I'm going to increase it in about 10 unit values. And hopefully I'll remember to turn this thing off when I'm done. Okay, so now I would say, it's saying 10 values, so I would say it's probably magnified by about 10%, so maybe 85x right now. We'll go to 20, roughly. Unfortunately, I'm also disturbing the image quality. 30. Roughly. Okay, it's getting a bit diffuse now. I'm going to push it to 50 and then I will exit out and hopefully I will remember to turn off the zoom function before I next use the scope. All right, we'll give it a chance. I'm going to give it a chance to stabilize, and then we'll go out on this probably 100x view plus of Messier 2. Well, here we go. Messier 2 using the e-zoom function at roughly 50%. Let's assume that is percent. And basically, we've taken 75x, added 35, 40x to it. We're about 110 magnification right now. We are seeing a very highly condensed Messier 2 globular cluster on the screen at about 110x. And that is our Carpe Noctem view for the evening.